Welcome to Create Great. This podcast series features conversations with creative people from different backgrounds, from different disciplines, and different schools of thought. Thank you for choosing to listen. This podcast is hosted by me, David Bennett, Creative Director of APX Studio and Curator of Visual, an online showcase. The best creatives will always strive to create something great, and I wanted to explore how they go about this, what it means to them, their clients, and what it means to our wider society too. My guests are individuals whose work I've admired and often featured over the years on Visual, but I wanted to create this podcast to get to know the real people behind their creative work. I'll be asking questions about their own unique stories of how they got to where they are now, how much of it was perseverance and determination, or how much of it was just plain luck, and how do they go about creating something great. This is a chance to explore what drives these talented individuals or their studios to create great. I want to first of all thank everyone who's been DMing me and sending me emails about the podcast. It's great to hear that people are enjoying it and saying it's quite refreshing. But don't forget to hit the like button and leave reviews, as it's good to hear more feedback from other people. My guest joining me today is Michael C. Place, founder and creative director of StudioBuild. StudioBuild is an award-winning creative agency with an international reputation for creating strong visual narratives. Michael has worked with Nike, Made, the Stowe Brothers, and Generation Press, amongst others. I first met Michael at a Twitter meetup in Shoreditch, London, probably back in 2015. It was the first time we had met, and we both found out we had a real passion for Duval, which is probably one of the best beers and definitely one of the best beer logos out there. He's worked with many talented clients, such as Gary Huswit, who directed such great films and documentaries from Objectified, Urbanized, and Helvetica, to name a few. And on that note, I can't believe that Helvetica is now 15 years old. Unbelievable, Michael.
No, it's crazy. I was thinking about this when Gary announced it, and he'd asked me to be in the film like a couple of times. And the first time I was like, why would anybody be remotely interested in a film about typeface?
Yes.
And he persevered, and I'm so glad that he did, because that film is just incredible. I remember him coming down to we were living in Walthamstow at the time, and him coming down, and we'd just moved in. There's boxes everywhere. If you look at my interview snippets on there, it's just full of boxes, and we had the cats there. And one amazing moment when we was being interviewed for it was Brockman, our Sphinx cat.
Yeah.
Went in his litter tray, and they had to cut it because he could hear him scraping around the litter tray. And Brockman's claim to fame is he's on the extras of the DVD. It's got Brockman goes to the loo or something like that, and one of the extras.
Fantastic! Fantastic! Yeah, I have to get the DVD. I think I've got the download, but yeah,
right. It's all downloads now, right?
Exactly. I haven't got a DVD. And how did you meet Gary? How did you get that opportunity? Because I mean, you did the 3 posters. I remember the Objectified one, which was beautiful, using the different objects as the vector. I think I've got that at a studio in a tube somewhere. I think I even bought a T-shirt of it. I'm sure I did.
There was, So Gary just I've never actually asked him where he'd heard of me from, but it was just like he'd obviously maybe just seen some work and kind of knew that I'd used Helvetica, and probably a little bit of Helvetica at Design Republic, but not so much. And then he just contacted me out of the blue, and just the rest is history. And I'm then now, from being in Helvetica, he asked us to design the identity for Objectified, which is about industrial design. And then after that, we had Urbanized, which is about architecture and cities and etc. Yes. And we're doing his next 2 films as well, which he's going to be announcing the next one very soon.
Oh,
and Rams as well. We did Rams. I can't believe.
Right.
So he's worked for Rams on Dieter Rams. And we're doing 2 more with him, and another project that I'm doing with him as well. But we just got on really well. He's a very lovely guy who's got a genuine interest in design and the kind of what design can do for people and how design sits in the world. And I find that really fascinating. So he's wonderful.
Oh, they're great. I think they're one of those. they're going to be those iconic pieces that, you know, you see on eBay and it'd be like, come on, Michael, time for a reprint and
Yeah.
limited edition gold foil version. But
Yeah.
let's jump right back, because
Yeah.
that's 15 years ago. Let's
Yeah.
go back, Michael,
Wow.
because I think that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I'm really interested with these podcasts to find out how the people I interview and meet
Yeah.
and stuff got into sort of where they are today. So, you know, what really inspired you or attracted you to get into design? Are those inspirations still the same today, or are they slightly different?
Yeah. So in terms of kind of like a bit of context, so I'm from the north of England. We used to live in North Yorkshire, and my dad was a pig farmer. My mum was a nurse,
Right.
and we used to live on the farm. And so there's no history of design in our family whatsoever. My mum was quite good at drawing. I've got three older sisters who one did fashion and then subsequently is not doing fashion anymore. But I was just always really into the thing that I think subconsciously got me into design was heavy metal. So, you know, from being a kid, I was hugely into Iron Maiden, AC/DC,
Yeah.
all those kind of like classic 80s, early 80s kind of Motorhead, anything like that. I just used to absolutely love. And I think subconsciously those sleeves, especially for Iron Maiden, because I love that character Eddie,
Yeah.
and Derek Riggs type for Iron Maiden. Just I think that kind of really, it obviously stuck in my brain. I think it's just kind of one of those definite subconscious things that, like I say, I've got no, you know, we lived in a, not miles from anywhere, but on a farm, pig farm. So it wasn't exactly in a city, you know, where you're exposed to perhaps a lot more things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just, yeah, at school, I was kind of an fairly average student. I was really good at maths, but I just okay at art. And I used to design, I used to draw the logos, heavy metal logos, on people's, on my own clothes, and then for other
Yes.
people. So I remember doing Saxon wheels of steel on the back of somebody's jacket at school. You know,
Nice.
so I was just
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
really into
Brilliant.
that. I think that was it. And then the other thing, which is a really random thing, was a friend had a letter set catalogue at school, and I
Right.
remember looking at it and just going, "What is this?" It's such an exotic, weird publication that I didn't understand, you know, and kind of, and it really, and I think type's something that subsequently I've got on to just having a huge interest in as a designer, and the sort of power of type. And I think that again kind of was one of those kind of weird kind of connections. And then my art teacher, the first time I heard graphic design was at school, and my art teacher said, "Have you?" He sort of saw the style of perhaps my art, if you like, and he said, "Have you ever heard of graphic design?" He lent me a book on it, and I think that maybe contextualized it a little bit more, and kind of, you know, made me think, oh, there is such a thing as this thing that I've always really liked, but I didn't know it had a name. And I didn't realize you could have a career doing that. So yeah, that was the kind of the kind of start, was very much that music, and that's been a thread for me throughout my
Mm-hmm.
life. I'm just hugely into music, and then naturally going on, not naturally, but going on to, I know you know, but for the guys who don't, I used to work at a company called Designers Republic in Sheffield, and we just did record sleeves. That's, you know, going through
Yeah.
college, that was the thing that I was just hugely, massively into. The work of Vaughan Oliver, 4AD, to a small degree, Savile for Factory. But I think I was probably more drawn to this very visceral, slightly less polished version of design, which was Vaughan Oliver. And then going in, it kind of, I think, had that. I always feels like it's slightly refined, and as I've got older, which is, you kind of, that's life. I think is, you have this. Some would
Mm-hmm.
say Iron Maiden is as good a design as any factory record sleeve, but there's a lot of people who probably disagree. But I think it was, yeah, music is that thread for me throughout design, my career, and kind of interest in it. And we don't really, I used to do a lot of record
Mm-hmm.
sleeves, I just don't really do them as much anymore, and that's fine. But yeah, it was very much, yeah, all about music and music inspired, you know, things. and then I guess nowadays it's
Yeah.
not so much heavy metal because although I have had a
Yeah.
bit of resurgence into listening to some of that stuff again, it still sounds amazing, some of it. And then
Hmm.
I guess also I've always kind of had not always, but an interest in architecture. I love looking at buildings. I love
Oh, I can't beat it.
architecture, and that's something that I got into through time at Design Republic. And then now it's very much more art. I'm really fascinated by art and kind of and the power of art and modern art in particular, but any kind of art really. I just really enjoy that, that kind of real super self expressionism, and that's what I've always kind of loved within design as well is self expression within design. I've always been a big huge fan of that, and this idea that the best
Mhm.
design elicits an emotional response in the same way that a piece of art does. That for me is the best design, where it
Yeah.
really does, like,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. And the
And I
same as
love it.
music, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
I always think of design like music,
yeah.
because heavy metal got me into guitars. That's why I got far too many. You know, I think I'm still glad I got the hair to sort of rock out on. But I always think design is a bit like music, because music, you have an octave, you have
Yeah,
notes in between. And
yeah,
when you think about it, musicians can create such amazing, diverse, different sounds and stuff. And that's almost like design. It's like you have a
yeah,
computer, you
yeah,
know, you have the thing, but it's the individual that creates it.
yeah.
And I think that's what drawn to your work. There's definitely a personality of the studio build, which is yours,
Mm,
that is
yeah,
really reflected in the work.
yeah. I think as well, sort of, I've always said that I really find pretty graphic design really quite dull, and I
Mhm.
love this idea of I'm not of the Vignelli school of design, which is use only three different typefaces, and for me, design is all about pulling every single influence around you into creating something, and I think that obviously is for the right reasons that works. But I really love this idea that the whole world is there for the taking. That's all, that inspiration, all those things that you see around you
Mhm.
can be brought into design. I think is really important. I think that's comes that sort of self expression. I just genuinely think, and I think that's where maybe that started off with the likes of Vaughan Oliver, and his work just being so like wow, just
Yeah.
mind blowingly, like it blew my small mind. It still does to a degree. I go back and see this stuff and just go wow. In the same way, you could argue Crowell as well. It's like you look
Yes.
at the time that work was created. It must have been like somebody coming in from the future. It's just wonderful. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it really that yeah, and well, we all know and love the book. I've got it on my books, book me desk right here. The Wim Crow mode and module.
Yeah,
It's like it's almost lock and key.
yeah,
It's such a strong book, and
yeah,
I was lucky actually to see him talk probably about 95, 94 at an
mm,
ISTD lecture, and it's just like biggest
yeah,
hands in graphic design. Is this like should have been
yeah,
the goalkeeper? Absolutely,
yeah,
it's really tall. His work is yes, almost super futuristic. It is
yeah,
just
yeah.
really amazing, really
We,
amazing.
really lucky to. I went to see him talk in Dublin, and I think I was talking on the same night, and just terrified. But we went for dinner with him, and just like wow. I mean, people talk about don't meet your heroes, and I've met, he's one of them. But I'd never really heard of him until working at Design Republic when Ian bought Motor Module for everybody for working a weekend. It's like you can
Oh,
either give me the
lovely.
money or I'll buy you this book. And I'm really glad I took
Got
the
the book,
book
yeah.
because they're just it is like you say, it's just an amazing body of work. But the person's again kind of I'm drawn to characters within design as well, and it feels like he's a character. I like people who have a point of view, and kind of have a real character. I love that. Not It's not about homogeny in design personally. It's a much more kind of character. Show
Yeah,
that in the work that you do, in the outlook, and the way that you think is
yeah,
fascinating.
yeah. It will becomes. I think with successful designers, and we can probably name a few, it's that that design attitude. It's
Yeah,
that having a voice, not following the mainstream.
yeah,
Getting a bit of rub and going against it.
yeah,
Can I jump back to the Designers Republic because
yeah.
you know absolutely one of those studios that I remember when it came out. I think their character Sissy. I think I bought a A3 poster of it. I had the 100% meat free, whatever it was,
Yeah,
burger
burger,
one.
yeah.
I had it all, and it's just like probably got lost over the years as you grow up and you get slightly wider. I was thinking, "Oh my god, that was, 100% flesh," I think it was, off the top of my head. I
Yeah,
just got a
that's
vision
right,
of it.
100%. Yeah, when it
Was
got the
it?
cow
Yeah.
horns on the burger bun.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we used to go to the indie clubs. I remember wearing that, a
yeah.
long time ago, long time ago. But they really had that design attitude to
Yeah,
it and stuff, and that real embrace of, you know, computer technology, but not computer
yeah,
technology as well. And
yeah,
a lot of the work now, when you kind of look back on it, and the record sleeves, which would definitely go there with, that idea of like a slightly bigger canvas to
yeah,
work on, and that
yeah,
tangible thing of holding.
yeah.
uh, it- it's like design masterpieces. And can you recall any? Have you worked on any that you're really super proud of?
Yeah, loads. It was such a weird kind of like studio to work in because when you're in amongst it, you don't really you know that it's almost kind of like operated like a band basically.
Yeah.
Ian was the manager and and whatever and the kind of you could say the singer and then you had all these people behind, that kind of bass, drums, whatever. But it was really it was wonderful to be in amongst that and kind of it was only when I went out of it you realize how many fans that they had, of design. And I've never
Hmm.
experienced that before. And I don't know if that's really the same of many other studios, but there's so many sleeves that we did that were just I love, like working on LFO, for instance. For me,
Yeah.
it's like working on bands or acts, people, individuals that I'm just really massive fans of, and you just have that buzz of working on Model 500, Juan Atkins, the guy who coined the term techno, and having conversations with him to working on Window Licker for Aphex Twin, to Populate Itself, to all these just Warp 10, the anniversary sleeves. It was just that real. It was a completely free. Everything was game, and that's where I really kind of. That's my love of that. That's
Hmm.
it was so almost like not run like a studio that everybody could just literally almost do whatever you want. And the fact that Ian used to always say the fact that we were in Sheffield meant that none of the record labels would come up because they can't sit, get a train, they can't be asked getting a train up, so we'd just be left to our own devices. It
Right.
was just, and for me, I think that I was thinking about that this morning and just sort of thinking that I think that that experience has really rubbed off on me. I've always, to a degree, thought of the studio as being a little bit on the outside, on the always on the edges, on the fringes, and I really like that.
Mm.
From being when we had the studio when I started the studio in London, we were in Walthamstow like 10 years before anybody else would thought about moving to Walthamstow,
Yes.
and then moving the studio up here. And there are loads of amazing studios in Leeds, but we've now moved the studio out of Leeds. We're now in Otley, which is this little market town. It's like 10 minutes from my house.
Great.
And it's an old mill. I couldn't get much more northern than that. It's a really old mill next to the river. And I love it. It's just kind of like for me, the idea of location is irrelevant. It's kind of given modern technology, it feels like you don't have to be. I know we're not talking about London, but
Hmm.
jumping from kind of London to Sheffield and had that similar kind of outlook of like, actually, don't feel like we need to be in London.
Yes.
And I think I'm not going to get into the north south design because I think that's just boring. But just the idea of just this idea that you could be anywhere for me is with a good computer and a good kind of work ethic and a good client who will be happy to, it's all about the work. That's what I always think.
That's right.
It's not about where you are. But yeah, Sheffield was such good fight, really wild times at times, it really was like a band.
Yeah.
But just that really did inform, and Ian's huge respect for Ian, in terms of the people that, giving the people the reins and recognizing talent, if you like, and kind of just letting them get on with it. And that's something that I've learned and tried to employ with the studio, which is like, find good people and let them do their thing, as much as you can.
Yeah. And how many people are in StudioBuild?
It's 5 of us.
Oh, nice.
It's 5, and it's great. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Because I was going to ask almost that thing of, do you feel, or is there a different tension or anything from the London to sort of going back to the sort of the motherland, as it were?
Yeah.
Are you what's interesting is almost going back to what you said about seeing everything around you and within the world and into design.
Yeah.
And that's obviously leading on to these sort of monograph books, and you seem to be capturing a lot more now than you probably were whilst in London, as an observation.
I think so. Yeah, it's I think it's weird. The kind of, we used to do a lot of sort of so-called self-initiated stuff with the studio, and then it kind of stopped. As you know, in London at the time, we're talking like 10 years ago, something like that, there seemed to be a new opening of some exhibition that was design related, and that kind of then tailed off, I felt, a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And we did a fair bit, and I've always really enjoyed it, and I always just do it. I like to try and do it for the right reason, which when some people say, "Oh, I do self-initiated work or personal work because I haven't got a client butting in," it's like, for me, then you're not doing the right work for a client. You're not being, that a client should not be the kind of reason why you're not doing the type of work that you want to do.
Yes.
And the lockdown of, obviously, that everybody's gone through, that kind of really opened my eyes to kind of, I had got stuck in, like everybody, I think, got stuck into this rut of getting up, driving into Leeds to the studio or wherever, into city or studio, and then working, then coming back again. And actually, I think I started walking. I genuinely love walking.
Yeah.
And around here, it's just crazy. It's just like 2 minutes and you're out in the countryside. And it kind of really gave me the time to kind of really think and appreciate the stuff that's around you. And obviously, well, not obviously, I'm a lot older now, so I'm probably thinking about, had a really horrible, one of the reasons we moved up was my dad wasn't well. He subsequently died, but it was just all about trying to see him a lot more, but then also kind of reflect on all these things that kind of was going on in life. And and again, it kind of bring this idea of bringing all those things. The personal work is very much about bringing all these thoughts and feelings and kind of getting it down on paper, and then lucky enough to self-publish a book on it, which is bonkers, and then doing another book at the moment. And I think it really did open. I think I'm very much more, perhaps not being in a city also has its downsides. I know that there's kind of like, there is a real desire, I find, every now and again, to get into a city environment where there's all this stuff whizzing around and you have all this, wonderful things that you can go and see. And I think that's the only downside I found to having the studio in Waltham, in Otley, is we haven't got galleries. We've got about 20 pubs in half a square mile, but it's
that's where the best ideas come from.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a whole nother conversation, isn't it? But that I think for me, kind of, it really did open my eyes, and kind of, it's really reinvigorated my desire to sort of really look at, other things and be inspired by other things. And I found that perhaps getting out of London has really helped me out of this bubble and really try and open my eyes to a lot of different kind of forms of inspiration, and one of them being just what's actually on my door, and kind of and the beauty of it and the hostility of it, and all these amazing things kind of that has really definitely expanded my kind of horizons and views. And maybe it almost kind of feels like a little bit, and I'm really doing the North a disservice because Leeds is amazing, Manchester's incredible. There is no way that it's like a poor cousin to London. The cities here are just genuinely amazing. So much going on, but it almost kind of feels like slightly. I'm old enough to be kind of started pre-internet, so your references were harder to get, so they were harder to find and became more obscure. And I think that for me was Savile's kind of real. That was his thing. He found these things that nobody else has. It's like digging for music, but for references. And I found that. So now I'm actually finding references that perhaps I would never find in the city that I can bring in. It has its kind of pluses and minuses. But yeah, it's just very inspirational around here. It's just genuinely beautiful. I love it.
Great. I was going to ask, and I've asked other people really, that is there anything you do differently in your career, or do you feel like you've said it how you want it?
It's weird. I kind of go. I have a real massive. I've always said this. I have a real love-hate relationship with design.
Right.
And I go through real phases of loving it and then just being like everything's rubbish. And I like the idea that people can vocalize that. And sometimes I find the most frustrating conversations. You'll meet with people in other studios and you'll go, everything's rosy, it's amazing. It's like, actually, it's quite nice to say, actually, it's shit at the moment.
Yeah, be honest.
Really good. It's really hard. And it is hard. You run the studio. It's hard work. So it's weird. I vaguely remember that when I was a kid, I did again have this slight interest in architecture, not to any degree that I have now, but I'd like to have been an architect. I think there's something really wonderful with what you can do with a building, but equally in the same way, there's something really wonderful and powerful about which we know is about graphic design, the profession that we do. One of the questions was this idea of career choices, and I think my only real regret is actually not working abroad. I think that's the one thing that I think like shit, I wish I'd have done that.
Right. Is that for cultural reasons? Or?
I think it's purely personal, and maybe just like seeing. I've always had a fascination about what's around the corner. What is there to discover? And again, kind of, I think it'd just be really interesting to see how a place. I understand how a place can inform, the output, and I think that would have been something that would have been really interesting to try and see what would have happened. And maybe I wouldn't have been a graphic designer. Maybe I would have met somebody else and done something completely different. So there's all these kind of what ifs, but I think just sort of having that opportunity to practice design in another country would have been something that I think would have been really fascinating.
Right. And the pig farm didn't take your fancy. You had too much of it as a kid.
Yeah, no, it was really funny. My dad, and I think this is not a new story. My dad just didn't understand why I wanted to do design. My mum was mega supportive. My dad was just like, not like you should be a pig farmer, but but it was like what he didn't understand that people can have a career and make money from design. But subsequently, he's incredibly proud of what we've done, and that's really lovely. So I think kind of that initial, like, what are you doing? You need to get a proper job, turned into being just incredibly proud of what we've done and what we've achieved. And when he sees the work, it just genuinely, whether he truly understood it, is just really wonderful to see that, like, oh, you did all right, didn't you? Which is great.
That is great. And Build is part with Nikki as well, your wife, is that correct?
Yeah. So when we came, after Design Republic, we both quit our jobs, traveled around the world for just under a year. So I suppose we did get to experience a lot of the world, but not work there, and just It just did the opposite of not work. And we set up, we always intended to set up in London, because I think at the time, so this is what, 17, 18 years ago, I think the landscape, I think, is very different from north to south. And I think, that we knew that it would be easier to set up down south. And then I've always had this weird thing where I don't feel like I've actually been successful unless I do it in the north of England, in Yorkshire, which is that's just a stupid thing in my head, nothing to do with anything else. But we just, Nikki was working for Sony, so when we came back, she got another job back with Sony at PlayStation, which is amazing, enabled me to come back with no clients, to literally get a portfolio of work to start building up the studio. So we sort of landed in Camden, and then we moved to Fulham, which was horrible, but I'm trying to remember the other one next to her, Clapham Common, to Walthamstow. So it's kind of like going from a desk in a little room to then getting a spare room, to getting a slightly bigger spare room, which I'm sure is a lot of paths for a lot of people, to then getting the studio space in Walthamstow, to getting a bigger studio space in Walthamstow, to then sacking it all in and moving up north. And so Nick works. She just works with me. She's amazing, and it just works. Sometimes we have that shared goal, which is great. It can be hard as well. Kind of, you've got that kind of, you work with somebody, you go home and they're there as well. And sometimes having that separation has been good, but we're still married after 18 years. So, it's doing something right, I guess. So it's good. So we work we work together. She's great. She's very, very good. I think it would have gone bust a long time ago if it hadn't been for Nikki, that's for sure.
Yeah. And have there been any really, owning a studio and stuff, and managing clients and stuff, have there ever been like really bad moments when you just gone, oh, what the hell am I doing?
Oh, man.
And if you anything to elaborate on, you don't need to name names, but I think sometimes it does happen in the industry, and people need to sort of be aware that it's not always the Photoshop mock-up at the end.
I was thinking about this the other day. I'll give you three very short stories that were just. One was, I remember going into, this is when I was just working by myself. I had this agent called This Is Real Art. So it's Adrian Shaughnessy. I don't know if you remember them.
Yes.
And they took on little one-man bands, and helped, bring a bigger team with clients. And I remember we were doing a pitch for Channel 4 for, I think it was E4, the brand for E4, and we'd done all the work. Adrian and I went into Channel 4, and we had this huge board table with about 15 or 16 people around it. Adrian and I sat at the end. We did boards that we'd actually printed out and put on foam through there, and we started. And within about a minute, one of the guys said, "Is it all like this?" And we're like, "Yeah." And I said, "No." And we literally almost had to just about face and walk out within been in there about three minutes, which was just crazy. And then we were doing a big project for a TV channel brand, and they got, again, it's TV, maybe we're just not suited to TV.
Not good for TV.
Yeah. And I remember the first round of feedback was, "I thought you guys were supposed to be good." Not very constructive, but I just remember thinking, oh my God, this is like. So then, kind of ups and downs. We've all, loads of ups and downs. I remember one, we're about to go into it's important to talk about this stuff. I know that's why you're asking, but I remember things weren't going amazing. We're about to go into this big presentation, and the bookkeeper ringing up, speaking to Nikki, we're down to this presentation, and the bookkeeper going, "You really need to get some money in." And we were like, "We're trying." And it was just like this, shit, So it's hard. I always say that to people, kind of that this isn't rosy all the time. And it is a really hard industry. There's a lot of people doing amazing stuff, and I think you just have to be prepared for the knockbacks. That's part of the job, isn't it? It's like grow that thick skin as quickly as possible, you know?
Yeah, it's not us, it's them.
Yeah.
It's always a good one. It's not us, it's them. All right, brilliant. Right, we're going to go into one of the favourite parts that people have been saying that they enjoy this bit, the quick fire round.
Okay.
So this is it, Michael.
Wow.
You don't win anything.
Okay,
right. Here we go. All right, so I'm going to ask you 6 quick fires. Only one answer. You can't have both. Okay, sans or serif?
Oh, sans.
Salt and vinegar or cheese and onion?
Cheese and onion.
Illustrator or freehand?
Oh,
I've got you on that.
It's Illustrator now.
What happened to the freehand? Yeah. Didn't you get a hack for it?
Yeah, I got a guy,
so you could use it.
Yeah, our IT guy. Just and that I just had to bite the bullet because I was so pro freehand. It was unbelievable.
I know.
And then
I think you're going to start.
So Illustrator. I love it now.
Oh, brilliant. Hedges or lawn?
Lawn.
Good man. Good man. Carlsberg or Duval?
Duval.
That's it. I feel I know you already.
Yeah.
It's like what can I ask? What can I ask? I know what to ask. Exactly.
We could go into another hour-long conversation about hedges and lawns. I could happily do that.
Well, I think the viewers, listen to me, viewers. I think the listeners might like it, you know. Did you do the garden on the weekend or was it?
I did.
I was looking at the grass on Sunday going, I should really cut that because I bet Michael's got it nice and
I did it.
even.
Yeah, I did it. Yeah,
did you?
Yeah.
I knew you.
Oh, man, yeah, we've just been doing loads of stuff on the garden. Yeah. We live in a lovely house that has a big garden that is, it takes a lot of work, but it's amazing. But I love it because it's just not what I do every day. And that's what I really love. It's getting away from the computer. I've got paint all over my hands, so I've been painting all weekend. And it's ace. I love it. And I think that's that real, again, go back to a slightly more relevant thing to design is I think it's really important to just have another interest. Our lawns are actually could become that real fascination, having that perfect lawn. I get lawn envy when I walk around. So I want to achieve that perfect lawn. Yeah. It's like that perfect bit of type, or a layout, it's like
exactly.
It's the fascination. It's the kind of, the real desire.
Yeah. And plus you do it with hands. Let's remember that's, I think that was one of the things, with design probably back a long time ago, probably now. It's probably about 20 odd years ago. A lot of it was by hand, and one thing I always found fascinating, sorry to cut across you, Michael, was when you talk to people about the industry, like when I remember graduating in 94 and really starting to work sort of 95. And we didn't have color copiers back then in your studio. You had your beige Mac Quadra or your Mac whatever it was, and you used to send it out. And they said people ask sometimes, what's the difference? Time.
Yeah.
That's the only difference I can say is time. Could you send work out?
Yeah.
Do you want it on a rush job? That's going to cost a bit of money. Oh no, we'll have it back in the morning. All right, that job's out the door.
Yeah.
Next work on the next thing.
Yeah.
It was almost, you could pace yourself rather than this is done this. Oh look, a fax is coming.
Yeah.
Okay, well I can't read it. Just phone me. Yes.
I'm doing a book at the moment called Pleasure. It's the one that's my next book, like personal.
Okay, great.
Thing. And it's I've discovered that the thing that I'm really interested in does have a name, like graphic design. It's called autoethnography. So it's like the things that inspire you in a kind of personal way and have narrative that you then bring into your work. So I'm doing a book of kind of like, it's called Pleasure. It's all the things that give me pleasure. It's kind of very autobiographical. And one of those things that I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to do it, but is the PMT camera. Can you remember the PMT camera?
I do. That's how I cut my teeth in graphic design on the PMT.
Yeah.
Photomechanical transfer.
Yes. Yeah. So hours spent in that sweaty little room doing, those. But Yeah.
Yeah.
You just straight away, you know, how can you tell somebody's age just by doing that?
Doing that, yeah. Maybe we should make it a video.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Equally kind of, again, kind of what I loved about that pre-computer thing is I now fully understand the process of print and actually what happens. I think that's really, in some ways, the thing that I find missing from design education is kind of like it tends to be like, here's the end result, here's the mock-up of your tote bag, you know, but
Yeah.
not all the things. How you can, if you learn these simple things in the process, how much better that thing can be with very simple, with a bit of knowledge. Well, they say a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing, but it you know, it could be a really amazing thing as well. But I would never want to go back to pre-computer, but I think it really was really interesting and it made me really think about how things are made and produced. And I think that's also really important in a life lesson at the moment. It's like trying figuring out how things are made, or actually ultimately you'll get a better result because you fully understand it. And that can be the same with its design, isn't it? It's like, how can you really get under the skin of a client and understand what they want? And that's through discussion and really breaking stuff down, which is that's the part of the kind of process of projects that I really enjoy, is really understanding and how design can then make a difference to that business, which is obviously that's what we're paid to do. But there's a real joy in that.
Yeah. And sort of skipping around a bit, what's one of the greatest moments you sort of remember, and sort of the impact it had on, well, it could be culture, it could be anything, almost that thing of like, I'm really glad I did that. If there's the one thing that Michael C. Place and StudioBuild, what is there something, or is it not, time's not yet?
I don't think the time's quite yet. I did think that the 11 years exhibition was a bit of a highlight, the thing that we talk about.
Yeah, it's lovely. Yeah.
But I think one of the things is I've been thinking about this a lot more, about design, and people talk about fast fashion and slow fashion. I'm thinking about how design, for me, it sounds really bad. When you say fast fashion and slow fashion, it sounds really interesting, slow fashion. But I think kind of slow design, for me, and what I'm going to say is I really enjoy relationships within client relationships and kind of really building that trust over a lot of years. So I think the one thing that we're doing, so I'll skip back a second. So we work with a printer called Generation Press, who I believe is the best printer in the country. And obviously there's a lot of really amazing printers, and every design studio will have the printer that they think is the best, and you hold on to them basically. But we've worked with Generation Press and Scrub and Anand and Kate and Graham for over it must be like 15 years, something like that. And I've just really, and they recently got B Corp accreditation.
Yes.
And that's really lovely to see, work with them for that long, to see somebody succeed is really wonderful. I love and hope that we've played a small part in that, but more for me, it's also helping them achieve their dreams, also kind of like building that friendship. And I think that is really wonderful. And I think the best, but if you really think about design historically and now, I think the best design comes from somebody, and it's usually, you know, having a client and a studio relationship that is built over years and trust. So you could say, you know, Factory and Savile, you could say 8VO and Hacienda, for instance, you know, or whatever, or, you know, Vaughan and 4AD. It's like, these people, you know, they have this trust. So you build this, and it's about the long game. I've been really thinking more and more about this. Goes back to the slow fashion thing. Is more about the long game. And we've just done this identity for the second Harewood Biennial, and it's a big stately home just outside of Leeds, between Leeds and Harrogate. And we did the identity for it. It's the second one we've done. And there's a really good clothing brand called Community Clothing, which I've got a couple of things from them now, and they're from Blackburn. And it's all about, their thing is slow fashion. It's really investing in people and the surrounding, and really thinking about how you make things, and having a real consideration for everything about and people. And I just love that. I love that idea of just investing in people, and that's what it's all about, and kind of the choices you make. And I think that then comes back to Generation Press, who I believe are one of the most sustainable. They've been talking about, they do this, they've just been doing it for so long. It's what they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we're just doing a book with them, which is going to be out soon, summer hopefully, just to celebrate that. And it's just, so the real joy, and kind of, there's loads of little moments, but I think that for me has been really rewarding. That long, that's, we started off as kind of, we didn't know each other. This is Scrub who runs the company, to then have been, really good friends, and kind of, and sharing those ups and downs, and sort of helping each other out, through those ups and downs. I think that's really important to foster those relationships. And that has been so rewarding, just to see them really kind of fly is just wonderful, brilliant.
Yeah, because you almost become the creative partner to them, which is really nice. I like that idea of the sort of the long game, and making sure that your creative vision and their vision is aligned.
Yeah.
And on that note, actually, sort of going back, remember this thing?
Oh yeah, yeah. Tim,
love the work. Absolutely love the work.
I tell you what, that's funny, because that was one of the projects that I was gonna, when with your, the questions. I remember when I got that back, and this is really sad, I got that back from Generation Press. I think that's one of the first things that they did for us, and it actually made me cry. And it was just like,
really?
it was just genuinely like, wow. And
it's beautiful.
And Tim's, another guy that I've worked with for a long time now, and again, it's kind of like, has become a friend. And it's just amazing just to see, if you can, this is what we're paid to do, isn't it? Is to help these people and to achieve their dreams, and that's, when you see it, it's wonderful, brilliant.
But just this, I love the drilling on it and stuff, like the idea of the binding, and that goes back to your thing of knowing a process. Almost allowing the user to create whatever they want.
Exactly.
I love that.
I love that. I remember doing other pieces where the idea that you can actually, by writing on it or destroying it, and I'm not saying it's like a completely original idea, but that idea that print is something that you look at, but I like the idea it's enhanced by being destroyed or written on or something like that is fascinating. Just really playing with that process, or the end, the end thing is just, how can you add to something by, we, like I say, we're so used as kids, like a book is a very precious thing, as it should be, but to subvert that, and the idea actually that people rip it makes it better. It comes back to that thing for me, is like that pretty graphic design is for me, I like things that there's a little bit of, maybe it's a little bit punk or whatever, I don't know, sort of that old Design Republic kind of, attitude sort of kicks in, that I think is really nice.
Yeah, I think also your digital work is, because obviously a lot of the stuff I collect from you is the printed stuff, but your digital work has that real attitude to it as well. It doesn't follow the conventions as expected, which I think is really, really lovely, really nice to actually sort of maybe put yourself out there a bit more as a studio, and go, well, we do digital, but we don't have to do it in the expected way.
Yeah, I think that for me was that going back from like from vinyl to CD, and just thinking, shit, God, now it's reduced to this horrible little thing. And then a cassette was always like oh, I really don't want to design that. But then it's like, there's this thing that isn't going to go away, and actually embrace it. And I really struggled with it for a long time. But now the worst thing used to be when we were asked for websites, I was like, oh God. But now I love it. It's just, it's looking at it in a different way, isn't it? It's like, how can you approach a bit of information? How can you display that information in an appropriate way that, isn't annoying, but is equally interesting, and really making the viewer recognizing that the viewer is an intelligent, kind of person. I know that's not always going to be a way across the whole board, but yeah, I think it's important to embrace any kind of format, and then really, kind of subvert it if you can, if it's appropriate. It's good.
Yeah, because your work does feel playful, like the shapes and stuff. I was just looking on the on your Twitter, like the beer can you did. It's just the shapes, just like
that comes back to type. I just love type. That is like, I'm just in awe of, in the same way that I'm in awe of musicians and what a musician can do. I'm not a typographer in any way, shape, or form. I genuinely love seeing craft, and people who really know. This is what we always do, is like we try and partner with people who are specialists in their field, because I just love seeing what somebody whose whole focus is on this one thing, how amazing it could be. But you plug all these things into it, and you've just got this group of people who just create something really wonderful. And I find that that's really joyful. What can come out of that is really exciting.
Yeah, I'm going to jump right back to Iron Maiden, because I feel like I have to. Ever since they had 3 guitarists, never really listened to them. Seventh Son was the best album. Great, I've got a lovely story about it. I remember as must have been early teens and stuff, going to Al Price. Remember Al Price? Always on your high street, Al Price. And Iron Maiden single was out. Me and my mate went in there like after, I think it might have been primary school. I remember it. And just looking at the cover, to your point, Michael, going, that's brilliant. And my mate going, I'm going to buy that. And he went up and he was like, can I have that Iron Maiden record? He's like, which one? He's like, that one. Is what, the Flight of Icarus? He's like, yeah. And he couldn't read it because it is in like this calligraphic black letter. And I actually think the guy said, do you know what that says? And he's like, no,
I want it.
That's stuck with me. And every time I look at the Flight of Icarus cover, I'm just might have like probably like a 10-year-old, 11-year-old idiots like us standing there just pointing at that one.
That one.
that one.
Amazing.
It's brilliant. But Derek Riggs, formidable artist and stuff. Really, really good. And I've got another one because the record stores were great, weren't they? You really went there, and you would just peruse the records, the covers and stuff like that. One of my favorite records I remember buying was Whitesnake, the album, because it actually had a debossed logo in an embossed emblem. I've got it. 1988, I think, or 87. I've got it still, and getting all nostalgic. If I get that out, I will have a flashback to playing like a tennis racket, because I wanted to play guitar, in the style of the John Sykes, the amazing guitarist of Whitesnake. And it's just like I have this flashback moment, and I have that with so many records that I pick up now, and I go, oh wow, I can remember staying in line to get that. And there's one where I bought the Megadeth, yet again Al Price. I was going to say there's other record shops on the high street, but there aren't anymore. But I remember getting the Megadeth P-Cells, but who's buying? And he said, do you want the picture disc? I went, does that cost more? He was like, no. I was like, yeah, I love it. And every time I look at it, I've got it. I'm like, here's an idiot just saying, does it cost more? But it didn't.
Oh man,
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
But it's been brilliant, Michael. Been really, really, really good. And I can't believe it's been so long since we've actually seen each other. The years have flown by. But
we still look as handsome.
Is there one bit of? Oh, thank you. A lot more grey and goggles this time. But is there a piece of advice that you'd pass on to a client or a junior or someone that you've heard that you just think that's a really nice bit of advice, or something that I've held on to and I like to pass it on?
I've got like a few. I'm going to run through really quickly.
Great. Go on.
And then one that's actually slightly more poignant at the end is one: always range type left and never center type. Never do that.
Right. Okay.
It's not about fashion unless it's about fashion. So always just think about design not as like what is already out there, I'll just do the same, which is a lot of design, to be fair.
Yeah.
The best design is one that, elicits an emotional response. So really think about, really think about this. And the big one is like believe in yourself and believe in your gut. And I think that comes with slightly more experience, I think. And that's also kind of like I've found as a kind of business owner, studio owner, is it's kind of like that listening to your gut is on many levels, and that's kind of like whether it's an approach to project or actually whether you should take the project itself, because the alarm bells ring. So it's really kind of just believe in yourself and kind of really believe in your gut. And I guess the last one is just really work hard. I think that's what I've always said. I've just kind of have a real work hard, and I'm not going to say be nice to people, but just work hard, but kind of, but yeah, it's just really about working hard, but not letting work get in the way. And I think that is, just have a life outside of design. I think that's so important. Is like, design is work isn't everything. I think that's maybe the thing that I've learned over the last few years, and it is important. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't, put your all into it, but I think it's so important to have a life outside of design. And that's something that I really have learned, massively over the last few years, and don't having those regrets, don't have them, if it's choices like going to see your mum, go see your mum, don't work another weekend, is actually just have a life. Definitely don't let work get in the way. Or as my tutor used to say, I remember leaving Newcastle and he said, don't let the bastards grind you down. That was his ending parting remark, and it was always stuck with me. Brilliant.
Oh, brilliant. That's really good. That's brilliant, Michael. So what can I say apart from thank you for taking the time? It's been a pleasure. Wonderful. And if I ever come up to Leeds,
we can go around one of those like 20 pubs in half a square mile, and we can go for a walk as well.
Yeah, I might go for a sleep.
Yeah, it's really lovely. Yeah, thank you for inviting me to do this. It's really nice. Really good to see you again. Nice.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I look forward to seeing the new stuff that comes out and everything else. I was going to ask you, actually, send me some photographs of this and anything else, and I'll put it on the visual so then people can see what we're talking about as well. I can't do the hand motions of the PMT machine, but I'm sure people of a certain age will know what we're talking about. But again, good. Michael.
Nice one.
Excellent. Thank you. Wish you all the best of luck and stuff. And next time, hopefully, we'll go for a duval
definitely
or two.
Face to face. Nice. Thanks, David. Brilliant. Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I look forward to you coming back for the next one. If you'd like to find out more about OPX and how we create great, then check out opx.studio. And if you'd like some daily inspiration in your life, then do visit visual.co.uk. And if you enjoyed this episode, head over to Spotify and give us a follow.